now have Venus in the first house. Now, what does this mean? It means you are an attractive force because you have love for yourself and love for other people, essentially. Now, love's a word that people play games with. It's not all about that, but that helps you become attractive to many people. How? Because you aren't so quick to do shit, quick to do this, quick to do that. You can look at things and be like, okay, well, I don't agree with this. I don't fully agree with this. I don't hate you. I can hear you out. I could even do something for you. As long as it don't take away from what my main thing is. Because, like, we love ourselves, too. I always preach that because, like, I'm a Taurus. So, we love ourselves. But then we are considerate, right, towards others. And people take note of that. People like that type of person. They like to count on these people. They like to turn to these people for, help, essentially. And they do. You're not a weak person if you have, green chocolate. You know, you just move slower and shit, some of you. And then some of you move fast, or people think you move fast, but actually you're doing a lot, you're doing a lot of thinking towards other people, which is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. And it's also a bad thing when he calls yourself to the point where you don't want to learn anything else, or you don't want to hear what other people are going through, or what's going on with other things besides yourself. I know. And then there's other ways of loving too that are, not so loving, but these people still love and shit in that manner, or they care, more than they love, really. So they like talk about people's, they might talk about people's dicks, and talk about people's guts, and how they ain't moving around enough, or how they ain't gutsy enough, or they ain't this enough. The person who has like Venus in the first house doesn't care about that. They care about and understand that with time, people see them the right way. And early on, people might like, try to call them weak and other things because they ain't doing shit the way that other people doing, not moving at the same rates as other people. Maybe they're, actually, doing too much where they're trying to like have too many friends and shit. But ultimately, those people are actually the people who know what's going on. And they do, because they also typically they ain't so extra about shit, actually invested in, too deeply invested in, too extra about shit, too loud about stuff. But this is more of the love language, and this is, people look at you and they're like, well, you're attractive, you're a loving person, you're a person that I can come to and just have some time with. You're somebody that considers other people, but sometimes it's not that, and it's like you have Venus in the first house and you're a person that's not so loving. I'll get to these types now. So Venus in the first house in Aries, right? You're seen as a loving person to some people. You're passionate when you're in love, right? And that's seen when you're with those people you love and care about. You're very passionate, very driven, very loud about what you love, and you let people know it, and you do. You don't hold back on that shit. But in doing that, sometimes other people could be, a little bit like, I don't know. I don't feel that as love. I think you're just being too grandiose towards, what you see, and other people don't see it that way. But the people they care about or love, more so care about, they're gonna be very passionate towards them and let them know right away, you know, not hold shit back. They're gonna let these people know when they fucked up though too. It's not always a thing of, I'm gonna let you know in a good way or more, an endearing way or whatever. Maybe you're fucking up and you ain't doing my heart right. You make me feel like you don't have enough care for me. You ain't trying to do for me enough. You don't see things my way, mostly that. You don't see shit the way I see it. So I don't love you anymore. These people will be like that. They're more direct about how they love. And sometimes it's just, that's what it is. If you don't love it, they can move on, but, and then sometimes, like I said, they're more passionate with the ones they love, the people they like actually love and want to be around. And they'll be like, extra about it, loud and proud about it. They'll get aggressive towards people who like hurt their loved ones. These people, the people that they actually love, a lot, really care for a lot. But the person who has Venus in the first house and it's Taurus, right? This person, these things for what they are, doesn't get too grandiose about shit. Don't expect shit from people too much because they know that they're there and they'll always be there for people. It's not the fact that they're not this way or that way. They just don't see the point in all that extra stuff. I don't have to get loud all the time. I don't have to fuck around and, get to bitching about shit so much. I can be here for you when you want to sit down and bitch about shit, when you want to bitch and get loud about stuff. And I'll be there to, hear the shit, and I'll be there even afterwards, after you're gone and everything else. I'll still be there. I'm just that guy that's, I'm around, and they don't mind, being alone either. They love themselves more. They do. They care about the more subtle things, things too, right? You know, they don't mind helping people out, and not expecting things, right? But then they also do need things, from the people who love them too, and actually love them and shit. You know what I'm saying? So like they take note of what this person does. This person likes this. They show more of their, like they just love doing that, so they like do it. Whether that's in a way that is more, passionate or not passionate or whatever, they do that. That's where their time goes. That's the thing. That's where their time goes mostly. So they love doing it. They like to be in tune with their five senses. These people. That's not a weak thing. They like to know what they see, smell, hear, taste, and textures of things. They move a bit slower. That doesn't mean what people think it means. It don't mean things don't get done. It means things actually do get done. But it gets done for them. And they like do this. They have the ability to sit back and say, okay, do I want to do that, or does somebody else want me to do that because they want me to feed into their fucking bullshit agendas, their fucking weak ass agendas that they have, or do I want to do it? They take the time to see if it's like actually what they want to do, or if it's what somebody else wants to do. They are not easily swayed, and that's why people love them. They're self-loving people, and it's like a known thing, and when these people are, there, it's like cool, but then when they're gone, it's like, damn, they're gone. Like it's like these people who have that type of love, right? Self-loving, and sometimes they're known as hard lovers too, because they won't give energy out. They won't, unless you're worthy, they deem you worthy of it, because they don't want to compromise themselves. They need to be that person who they are. They can't be somebody else. Doing that is just, they wouldn't be them then. They love themselves that much. They might come off as stubborn and shit. It's not a stubbornness though. It's a thing that, if you're gonna know me, you're gonna know me, and that's who I am. I'm here for you if you want to talk or do something with me, and I'm always around. But you gotta approach me right and everything, man. You can't just approach this person, be too fucking extra about stuff, get too fucking giddy about shit. These people don't always like that. Some people can, do that. Some people don't mind. You gotta know what these people like and shit though, and you gotta really watch the way they move and shit. It's kind of hard, and then that's the thing. Like I said before, when they're gone and shit. They ain't gonna come back. So you gotta remember everything that they did for you and everything else, because they were that. But they don't always stick around. But when they're around, you gotta appreciate them while they're there. That's fixed earth right there. And that's like how they love and shit. They like things. They like to give things to people that they deem worthy and shit. They give their time to people that they deem worthy. They take really the time for themselves to sit back and be patient and see shit for what it really is. And then of course they have their own feelings about it and other things too. But and that comes with the Venus energy. People don't like that, but I don't give a fuck. I don't hate people like that. I really don't. But I got the next person though, right? Okay, Venus and Gemini. See, I have Venus and Gemini too, but it's not in the first house. This person is now seen as a person who likes to conversate with other people, and they're like known for shit like that. They're known to be a more of a communicator with people they love and like want to spend time with and want to hear conversations about. Shit about what's going on in the area. What's going on with their whatever. They like to talk about things going on with themselves. They show love through communication, and giving out, information to those who are, more intellectual. They like intellectual conversations more, more intelligent conversations, conversations that aren't always so grandiose. Now they can feed into somebody's, foolishness if they feel like it and they actually love that person, and they might not, but they're known as a person who will, talk a lot when they love someone. They'll want to be around and communicate with and have conversations with people who are smart. They want to learn, these people. Learning and grow like that. And that's the shit they love to do. Feeding their minds knowledge. And in turn it's also feeding their heart too, because they like just want to like grow as a person, and they like to, not just get so lost in the, funny shit all the time, but learning things is a thing too, about people and like how they think, and what's going on with individuals. They like to have that friend that is, or that person that is there for them, and it's always good to talk to. This person might not be talking to everybody, right? As they like intellectual conversation, they do this person like smart enough to have like conversations with on the regular. Like this is like people they click with, and I talk to them all the time and shit. But not everybody, right? They'll be small with other people. They'll They'll talk to other people now, but they won't. It won't be like that with everyone. You know, the people they truly love and shit, they're gonna talk a lot more with them and shit. Um, and that's what they do. You know, it's more about the conversations and not necessarily things with this person. You know, it can be, but mostly it's about the conversations, and people know them to be this way. You know, they give great conversations. They're, there to, talk to. You know, they're not stupid. These people know what they like. They know like to talk about what they like to do. You know, as far as like reading books or like, going out and seeing different things that they heard about from so and so and these people, and maybe doing that with other people. You know, being social like that, with other people. But sometimes they do it themselves. It depends on what sun sign is, right? But they're known for that type of playful, loving nature, and being a social butterfly like that, type of way. So Venus in Cancer in the first house, right? Venus in Cancer in the first house. This person loves deeply, deep. So what does this mean? This person likes to pour a lot of time, and not just time, and like energy into this person. Fully invest like everything. They jump head first, and you know they like to do that shit. They like to care, deeply about somebody, right? But this person is known to like care deeply about people, and like for their loved ones. That's how they love them. They care deeply about them. They're like, I don't want you to do this because I feel like you're gonna hurt yourself. You might hurt yourself if you do this. I don't want you around these people because, man, I just don't want you to, go out there and do that. You could hurt yourself. I want you to do this instead of this. This is, safer. I don't want to see you get hurt. I don't want to see you, fail. I don't want to, none of that. And they like the intimacy too a little bit. You know, and they like really getting down, deep with other people in the heart. Making people feel deep for them. Making people fiend for them. And it's like mostly towards the ones that they really care for, their loved ones, family members, and people that they deem worthy. They like people who are family oriented or have people that they really care about. And like they can tell by the way you talk about shit, talk about your past and shit. They key in on shit like that. Your past means a lot to you. And these people like really fuck with shit like that. They do. They indulge shit like that. That's shit that they love to do. But like I said, they like fuck around too. Like they fuck around and like when they're caring, right? They ain't looking at shit for what's actually going on. So they could be actually deeply hurt by other people too. Say they're pouring in and they're like, getting very intimate with, their lover and other shit, right? And then like their lover is now focused on like the like basic shit that's going on. And she's like, or he's like, well, I thought that we would be together and you wouldn't be running around with so and so, and we could just be, whatever. They really need that placeholder there, that person that is, grounded enough to keep them. But like when that person's not around, their loved ones ain't around, they can start getting like depressed. They do. Because they themselves also feel insecure in their heart. If I don't have that person, people I care about around me, I'm sad. I'm just, deeply depressed. And they are, but they have to learn that sometimes in life you have to let go of things and then they'll come back. Sometimes it's, instant. Sometimes it might be a long time and shit before you see that person again. But I know you won't ever forget, the good, the bad, and the ugly about what the relationship was. And the negative sides will really come from you. You've put so much time and effort into the relationship and you feel as though da 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 because they ain't giving credence to how much, you care for them. So now you're acting out of sorts, you know. But just know this is a very nurturing, very caring individual when they love somebody. And I mean like actually love somebody. And it's seen by other people. You just can't get away from so and so. You really do care about them. Why? And then people might even say, you guys are like together. Like, why aren't you with so and so? And then you're crying about it because you're a person who's like, oh well, they didn't want to be with me today because of da 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 da. You know, you're always thinking about those people mostly, in your heart. You know, um, and then you care about other people too, but it's just more so for the ones that you're like, really, fucking with. So. You don't like to see people go through your negative experiences because you just don't like it. But you're also attracted to shit like that. People who go through negative experiences because you believe you can heal them or want to get down to try to understand that on a deeper level. That means fucking around and stuff. But, you know, Venus in Leo. These people now. See, this one's another unhealthy one. But like it's not always unhealthy, for the ones they actually love and shit. Now, these people, right? And when they show love, they like to go extra, be extra. They like to be like, okay, we're gonna do this together, and you're gonna follow this and that, and you're gonna get this for me, and this is just gonna be a great thing. We're gonna have fun together. We should have fun together all the time. If you ain't with me, then you ain't having fun. If you ain't a part of what I got going on, this shit kind of like goes south, and then I'm gonna be pissed off. This person will get out of sorts and shit if these people that they love, dearly, like for real, like they need to spend time with these people specifically. They need to hear from these people specifically, and they ain't there. They're gonna be out of fucking sorts. They can get loud. They're gonna be upset. They can even find new people, but deep inside of themselves, they're just like, it's not the same anymore. It's not the same as it was. Like I'm having a certain amount of fun, right? Because I knew I had to move on, but like those people were just, and then like you as this person, right, are mad at them still. You're upset. You're like, they didn't see the vision that I had. They didn't want to fuck around on the shit I'm trying to fuck around on. They didn't want to see the vision I had laid out for us. They wanted to like leave and go away. You see this as like disloyalty, or you see it as you're not fucking with me enough. You're fucking with other people more, and that's just not a good thing. That's when you become hurt. You can be fragile in that area. Weak kind of to shit like that. You must have the best things at all times and shit too. That's not a bad trait to have, but like in the heart, when you're trying to be a loving person, it's not all about that extra extravagant stuff. Sometimes you have to just sit back and be like, you know what? They did the best they could. I'm not going to lash out on them, this time. But now next time you should, and this is what you should do if you're this person. Next time you got to make it that, you know what I'm saying? You got to make it that shit that I need. I need that extravagant, type of thing. The most, most expensive, the best things. I need the best things. I need the best people around, not just some, whatever. And sometimes when people love you, they, get you things and it's not what you necessarily want. It's what they can give you in that moment, and for what they knew they could give you. And then you might be upset by it. You being upset by it is actually a decent thing sometimes, though, because then it lets them know that they have messed up. But you also have to realize that you can't always get like that, with the ones who you actually love. And who those people are. Those are the people you keep around, because this is Leo and Venus. So you keep those people around you who you want around you. Now you try to like orchestrate and run your vision a certain way, and then when things don't go right, you get out of sorts. Just know that you, as that person, is gonna always see that. They ain't always gonna see that. They won't see it. Sometimes they won't see it. See what you see in yourself. Maybe they do see it, and then you just ain't hearing them enough. But this person loves in a grand way, and they love a lot of people, but they like keep the people that they really love around them, and they don't like to get rid of those people and replace them. It actually does hurt these people greatly, even though they won't show it. They won't show it, but like they'll know. They'll be like, damn, this vision, this fun, this time we're having together is great. But like when this person was around, it was better. If they're being honest about it. But, they like to be the center of attention in their love life. They really like to be cared for. These people do. Really need to be cared for. If you plan to keep them around and other things, you have to really care about what they got going on and put into them. You have to put into them too. But that is those people. I knew somebody who was like that. And they do get deeply hurt when, you don't follow what they got going on or what they had planned out, in that way. But, they'll get over it. They'll be all right. But the next person now, Venus in Virgo, right? In the first house. They're seen as, they like to, we know Virgo energy as very, detail-oriented people. They like to be analytical about it. So when they're in love, right, or this person is like a loving, right? Because people see them as a loving person, right? But like they're kind of too critical of their lovers. They do shit like this to the loved ones. They definitely hold them to a higher standard and shit. You have let me down. And it's like this. It's like sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing, right? So you're gonna overanalyze the situations to make this, thing a good thing, the relationship. You have laid out, as this person, you've laid out what you want from the relationship. I want you to talk in this way, move in this way, in specific things, right? And you have done that part, right? So like you can't be hard on yourself too much. But then you might be hard on yourself too, because guess what? Sometimes you might come up short in this relationship, and then you're like really hard on yourself. You are like, damn, I should have did this for my partner more. I don't think she liked that, or I don't think he liked that much. I should have put more time and effort to what I was getting for a gift, or maybe what I was trying to show them. I've let them down and shit. You sometimes worry about shit like that too. You get to thinking too much sometimes when you love people. You also, when you're in the relationship, like you said, you set out what you want from the relationship and everything, and specifically, this works for a while, right? And then at some point, some things happen, and you're like, damn, I thought we would, you would be, doing this, I don't like this. And you start to become a nitpicker. If they actually love you, they'll stick around, and they'll heed calls to what you're saying. Okay, oh, I'm sorry, I'll change that. I must have forgotten, or something else. I didn't know that greatly offended you. I'm sorry about that. Maybe you're trying to make sure that they are you know on their shit, so like they ain't getting fooled by other people, because you're an analytical person. You watch how people move, but like in a real way. Oh, so like you watch the like dumb shit that goes down. You watch the real people move around. And some people that you might feel like are I don't want to say rivals to you, because you're a person that is perfect, right? Because you like to like make sure that when you do work and when you do something, you do it to the best of your ability. But there are people out there who are, kind of like that. But you ain't insecure about it, because you know that every fucking day you show up. And if you don't show up, you're like, you get on yourself. You sometimes you do worry, but then you're like, you know what? I just gotta keep doing it that way, and I gotta keep sticking to this strategic, methodical way of loving my partner, putting and instilling into my partner the things that she or he needs to maintain themselves, not just me, but maintain themselves too. You like to push your partner, your loved ones. You're hard on them, essentially. It's never enough. But you may give gifts or hints of like them doing well. Oh, you're improving in this area now. I can see that you have, taken note of what I've said, and you're actually trying to like do better in this area. Keep at it, and you'll, eventually, be there. But right now you're not. And that's kind of how the relationship goes. Some people like that, because they want to be, pushed to that way, pushed to, see where they can improve. And then at times it seems like you're a nitpicker and other things. But sometimes they do that to just piss you off anyways. you know. But either way, you're a tough lover and shit too. When it's all said and done, you think a lot about the relationship, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing at all. And then you're like known for that with the people you love and shit like that. So since it's in the first house, and this is more of a love language, you know, people of different signages can have this placement in their birth chart. But you're known as that like analytical lover, that lover that's very methodical about the people in their lives, and trying to make them more aware of shit that's going on. Because it's great to like know what's going on around you and things that can be proved upon. Now, this person right here who has Venus in Libra in the first house, Venus and Libra in the first house, I do something like this too. They don't like to, they don't like the conflict shit. They don't. They hate that shit. they much rather not get to that shit, right? In that type of way, they like to keep the peace between their loved ones. Okay, can we do this instead of this? Can you, right now, can you, put your shit on the side so that these people, feel better. And then later on, we can do what you want to do. If it's like a family thing or a friendship thing, right? And you're like not wanting to see your friends, fight amongst each other. We'll do what he wants to do, and then we'll do what this person wants to do. But at some point, we'll get through what everybody wants to do together. You like to be that, middleman, that mediator, that peacekeeper in the relationship, keeping it together, right? You know how to communicate. And then this is another thing. This is why they love you too. You communicate in a way that's not so crazy and shit. You're not getting too loud, but you're being clear about what needs to happen and shit. But you're like calm about it, and you're gracious with your words, and it comes from the heart too. I was just trying to tell you that you should do this. I'm trying to tell you that you should consider this. You don't have to, and you leave it kind of like that too, but you kind of like, with the people you love, you kind of like remind them and shit too. You're like, hey, I want to, do this for you. I want to let you know this. I'm just telling you because, I don't want to see you, fail. I want to see you keep on living. I want to see this relationship, last. I can, speak up for you if you need me to. These people are like that. I can not always agree with you, but I can like consider what you have to say. I never thought about it that way. Okay, now I have new ideas because I approached you and talked to you, and communication is a big thing for this person. You have to be in a relationship that is very communicative, and you don't like the like extra shit, the violence and other stuff. But that's why people fall in love with you, because you like to, make shit, peaceful for everyone around you. And that's why you get whoever you're with, in your relationship, right? That's why they, stick with you and other stuff. Now, at times, you can become judgmental too. Now, that you like, you calls to these ideas. And then there's people out there who are a bit not about those ideas. And you can then attack them and shit. But when you're actually in your heart chakra pool, like this placement entails, you still try to not do that. So like, you'll hear what people say, right? Because this is Venus, this is not Mercury, right? And you'll be like, okay, so you've told me that person's like that, but you yourself know that there's another side to that. You know that there's another side to that. So you say that this person's like this, and I listen to you too, but I need to know for myself if that person's like that. And that's really why people like you. You're a cooperator, but then you can also, see shit in a more peaceful manner and shit when you're actually using your heart chakra. Yeah, you'll go out and you'll find that person, who's bothering your loved ones or whatever, and you'll, tell them, hey, you're fucking with these people. I don't like you, but guess what? I don't like you, but like, why would you, and you try to like get into why they would try to move that way. Because had you come to me another way, we wouldn't be like this, and you try to explain it to them in a logical way. And other thing, you're really a good person and shit, really. But sometimes you're not, but really you're not. I'm fucking with y'all. People who have Venus and Libra in the first house. People know you as a loving person that's very considerate towards others. You think about others before you do things. You may even put yourself on hold for other people, but like, you don't mind doing it because it was all about the conversations and the people you have in your life anyway. all those conversations you have with so and so, and like people's names and like what they like. You know all this. You take note of all that shit. So and so is this. And he does this kind of job. So and so is that, and he does this. And he loves doing this. You know all that shit about people. You're one of those kind of people. Not so looking in on yourself, but like looking in on everybody else and like considering other people. But you still do know what you need to do in the relationship, that your relationship. Sometimes people in the relationship you're with, see you as a person that might be, putting too much time in other people. But then they remember that, no, you actually love that person more than those people. You're just a person that goes out of their way more often than other people. And that's a good thing. Sometimes it is. But with this placement, it's not, because people take note of you being a loving individual. You're gracious, peaceful person. And you're calm when you talk to people. People like that shit. But be cool, calm in the corner. And the next person on this list is a kind of an unhealthy lover, in a way, because this is Venus in the first house, the Scorpio. Now, what is the likes of a hoe? I don't want to say that because it's not always like that, right? But they like to manipulate the relationship to see it their way. And they think it's funny too. Because in their eyes, a relationship is not about the not about the laughs and the touching and the easing into things. It's, you gotta care for me, and you gotta do it my way. I like you when you fuck around this way. I like to do shit like this. That's the shit that drives me. We have to. I desire this thing, right? In my heart, I desire this thing. But that's the thing. You're not doing what an actual green does, like me. You don't give a fuck about people. You don't care if you have to, like, man, you don't care if you have to gun people down. You don't care if you have to, stab somebody, hurt somebody. And you're just going to keep, doing what you do. As long as you acquire what you're trying to acquire, that's all that matters to you. And you know that to some people, that's a good quality to have, because it's like you're about your shit. And that is true about you. There's power in that. But with that, you're damaging somebody else's life. But when you're like, it's funny too, because you're going to damage somebody's life, right? But then you're a person that is damaged themselves. Typically these people are. Or maybe you're not damaged and you just like are a little bitch about shit. You know what I'm saying? Like certain things get to you because you see people's guts and you're like, I don't see them moving for me enough. They ain't deep enough for me. So now I'm going to lash out and get upset. They have said certain things that hurt my feelings, and now I'm going to be, getting vengeful, and I'm going to like flip the table on somebody, or I'm going to do this or do that. But you're a little more subtle. You ain't always loud. You ain't always loud, though. I'll say that. But guess what? It gets to that point, and you just can't hold back anymore. And you're like, I need this shit now. I need that depth, that, shit that I truly desire right now. I've been seeking it for so long. Or you're in a relationship with someone and they want to fuck around a different way when they know that you like to fuck around this way. So then you want to get active on them. Or you want to, hate them for like, changing up on you. We like to fuck around this way. We like to, go after our ends like this. But now you're saying that we want to do this instead. I don't like that shit too much. You're going to lash out and get out of sorts. And then, you still somehow end up getting your way in the end. But sometimes you don't, though, because you seek a certain type of depth in a relationship. And so you go through many relationships and you like transform a lot, go through a lot of transformations in life. You fucked around with that person, you thought, or you felt deeply about this person. They let you down, so then you ran around and you were upset for a while. You fucked around with this person, and like they all change you in a certain way. But then at some point, you become this other person that is you, that you claim is you. And it is you, because guess what? You went through all those trials and tribulations, went through all those, you know, down times, good times sometimes, But I know you guys fuck around and stuff. You have this type of way. And you like to twist shit a bit. Um, and it ain't about the loudness, it ain't about that. It's like, you want a depth, but it's like, do you have guts? Do you go and acquire what you want to acquire? Are you actually a person that's like that? Or are you just, talking hot air? You know, but then you like to manipulate people to like, find you and do this for you. And then sometimes you ain't actually seeing what's going on. You're just not lost now. You're just caught up in yourself too much, in your deeper feelings about things. And when really the situation might have been not like that. Maybe you just had to sit back and not get so emotional about shit. Because things ain't really that terrible out here. But you'll do you, and you'll still get things, you'll get stuff now. Don't get foolish on me, because you'll get stuff. Uh, but I don't know if you'll, you know, truly be fulfilled in that way. Unless you like can sit back and sometimes and not allow shit to be. You can still be intense and everything else, right? But you gotta look at the person that you're like fucking with and like do what they need you to. You gotta do for them and like not expect anything from it. Once that happens, I think you'll be all right. But these people are deep lovers. How that you guys are deep lovers, and you seek like toxicity, I believe. Um, but not all of y'all. Sometimes you're just looking for a deep connection that lasts forever. I think that's what all of them want to do, but then they like get lost on the way, and like one relationship dictates to them how to be for the rest of their life. But I don't know. Those people are doing other stuff in the trap club, and they're like known as a deep lover or a person who seeks love but just can't seem to find it. You know, but they still have their perks and stuff. Yeah, I'm just saying. But the person who has Venus in Sagittarius in the first house, these people are to be cared for too. You know what I like, you know what I don't like. Now, when I like, it's gonna be fun. That's cool. We can fuck around how like this and other stuff. And I even like to do different things. But you have to be a person for this person, right? That can, run around and not do the same shit all the time. They like to find newness every once in a while. You have to be a person who, and this is where it's like, kind of hard for this person too to find that, true love and connection that they want. They want to run around and have fun at all times. And most of the time, you know, they don't mind sometimes, understanding somebody that is, not so extra like them and other stuff. But they truly seek excitement in other things, right? Typically. So when you're in the relationship with this person, you gotta understand that, they like to run around a lot. And if you can't do like they do, right? They're gonna leave you and shit. They don't leave you. Now, they leave you because you don't see or fuck with what they got going on. And they'll let you know. Like, they have the decency at least to let you know that you're not doing things right for them. I don't see the relationship going any further than this. We had our time together. It was that. But now I want this. And it's because you can't adapt and try new things like I need you to. You want to stay in this type of lifestyle, but like I've grown tired of this type of lifestyle and I want to live like this now, or I want to, be around these type of people now that I'm, this way or that way. And we did that, right, in a relationship. These people like to, fuck around different ways. Just know that you have to be ready for all kind of shit with this person. One day they could want to do this, one day they could want to do that. And that's how they keep it fun for you. These people typically don't like one thing. They like to experience other things. Different people too. So sometimes it takes them a while to actually find that meaningful connection that they're looking for. And to them, they have to fuck with this person, but then they always, and this is the thing, y'all remember about this person and shit, they do that, but then they remember who made them feel like they could be themselves the most, or help them find a side of them that they didn't know they had, that type of thing. They will remember shit like that, but they have to seek like all this shit first, and then at some point they like go back to that person that they actually like really cared about, or like felt that person cared the most about them. But they early on like to fuck around and run around and stuff. You gotta let them do that and shit. You just gotta let them run around and not be held down and shit. Because they have to live their life and shit. And they'll let you know why they don't like you or why they fell out of love with you and other things. Typically, sometimes they don't, though, because this is a Venus sign, right? And it's like what their heart desires, right? And what their heart wants. They desire newness. You can call this the adventurous of them. These people. They're known as that person. They might fuck around a lot. Or maybe they had fucked around a lot, and then they want to go back to one of those relationships they've been to, or, maybe they're looking for something specific that fits their type of fun, and that they can keep that relationship fun. They need a person that can keep the relationship fun. We're not always doing the same things. We can do different things, but still have fun, still grow as people, and all of that. And if you can be that person for this person, then it's good, and it's going to be a fun relationship. But you have to be able to do all that stuff. Somebody like me probably couldn't be with somebody like that. And I do change up and shit, but like really I don't. So, and I don't hate those people. They might think so, but these people, you could have any placement, or not any placement. You could be a Capricorn, a Aquarius, and have this placement too. But like inside of you, you're like, they don't understand me enough. I need somebody who understands me and can have fun and like make shit fun all the time. We don't have to do the same shit all the time. It has to be different things going on, because that's how you truly have fun to this person. Trying different things all the time. It can be with the same person. That's the thing, because it's the heart chakra. They want one person to be around them. These people do want that. But it's just like every time they find somebody, it's like it's not it. And then they have to like be the one that's like a dick. And they're like, well, you ain't doing this enough and this enough, so now I have to do this. But that's that person, right? The adventurous lover. Now we got, and then they're known as that person who's like that. Now, the Capricorn in Venus in the first house, this person shows love. They like to take care of or show love for, and this is what I need to say, show love for their loved ones by gifting them things. But after they have, spent time and really, buckled down with what they had laid out. See, they'll lay down, and this is what they do. They'll lay down what they want in the relationship from you. And sometimes it ain't that, like, it's like ground rules, right? You do this, we'll stay together. These things will happen. Now you disrespect me and you do this, none of that's going to happen. We won't do that. That ain't going to happen. I'll take things from you. You'll be cut off from my, energy. I'll distance myself from you. But, these people are tough lovers too, right? They like to do things with the people they love. Create those memories and build with people and shit, They like to build people up too, but people they deem worthy and shit. The people they live with their loved ones, their, close friends and shit. We've been together for this long, I don't like to see you, lacking behind. They try to get people's ass in gear, you're not doing this anymore. You got to do this for yourself. I'm doing this, why are you, I don't need you to drag me down. They try to be that rock in the relationship too. Not too inspiring, but, they just don't like to see people down either. But they will also put people down who are like too fucking, on their own shit, like think they're the hot shit. They'll put them down. And like putting you down is actually a good thing because sometimes you need that reality check. They're good at reality checks, these people are. And they do that to the people they care about and love. You're my son, you can't do that, son. You can't do that, brother. You can't do that, girl. Because guess what? Once you do that, you won't succeed. Because it takes this type of person to do that, and you're not that kind of person. I've seen the way you move and shit, and you ain't that kind of person. And they'll say shit like that too, and sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow. That's what it is and shit. And they like always are there like that. I know you didn't like what I told you, but you have to be down for this type of thing and this type of thing. I'm a disciplined person too, and I expect you to do these things. As long as you do these things, we'll be all right. And they can let go of things too. Now, these people can let go of things too. But, they still feel deeply about that. Damn, I spent all that time with that. I put into that person. I taught this person this, and now they're doing other things. But sometimes it's the reward thing too. Like if they're like a father figure to somebody, or like, they're like a big brother to somebody. Or they like, we're with the bitch for a while and then like shit just didn't work out for whatever reason. They ain't gonna hold a grudge about, they ain't gonna do that because they know that they have to keep on living and keep on doing. But they're like, damn, what could have been if we would have, stuck together, that type of thing. But you didn't want to heed calls to my ground rules enough. So guess what? I had to let you go because you were kind of weak to what I had planned out and laid out. But, I get it. I'm not the type of person that's, this way or that way, but people still take note of what you do and other stuff. So, in a relationship with this person, basically you have to heed calls to their ground rules. And as long as you do that, things will, keep being cool. You might have kids with this person, this kid, or this guy might not be, or this woman might, give you things, gift you things as you, need it. But like, they won't just give it out that easily. That you have to prove that you are, about your shit too. They do that to, save themselves and also to see what you're willing to do for yourself. These people, um, they're kind of hard lovers too. Um, when they have, Capricorn and Venus in the first house, tough love and, fatherly kind of love in a way. How a father is telling their son, and bringing him down and back into reality, like, you might be happy about this or whatever, but, one day you'll be like this instead, and you have to buckle down, and you have to not fuck around so much. You have to, like, look in and, hone in on what you got to do, like, what you actually have to do to keep yourself afloat, and so you don't get pulled under and shit, and you can build yourself up. You know, if you don't do that, then you're gonna, fall fuck under. You're gonna not, have a foundation anymore. You know, and that's Capricorn and Venus. But Aquarius and Venus, these people like to talk too, right? When they're in love, they like their freedom a lot, but they like the freedom to think how they want to think. Um, see things the way they want to see things. They like networking. They like their friends a lot. And this person likes their friends a lot. They're a friendly lover. So sometimes this person can, to other people, seem like they don't care about their family that much. They don't love their family. When it's actually not that. These people appreciate the people that come into their lives and shit. But sometimes they have their own way of seeing things, and they like to talk to people who he calls their ideas. It won't shut them down. Maybe they came up in a family that did that, or maybe they came up in a family that was like that, but just, they had to do their own thing. Or maybe they had a friend group. And, they were the one who was, not being heeded to. They were getting abused by their friends because they weren't being heard and shit. That's why they were being abused. But they also weren't heeding calls of their own heart enough. They like information. They like to learn things. They don't like being tied down by anything, right? They like new information being told to them, not the same old bullshit. They like to learn things and grow as a person, mentally, spiritually, and all that shit, right? They may question shit that other people do. And to get them to think, you know what I'm saying? They do that to their friends and their loved ones. I know you told me this, but did you ever consider this as a possibility? Or, that people always say shit like that, but how about this instead? And they do that for multiple reasons, to see if you're actually their friend and you like feed into that idea, or are you going to dismiss it and be like, oh, nah, man, it's like this and people known it to be like this forever. There's no way that some new possibilities ain't possible. They need freedom and love. So when they look for a relationship, they look for somebody they can grow with, mentally, spiritually, and, grow with, click with. They don't like dumbasses. Now they might like fuck around with the dumbass for a little bit and or a fool or something and feed into that to see like what they can get them to do, as this is a smart individual in that area at least. They seek to be smarter, more knowledgeable in their heart. They like to have communication with friends that are, close knit. They're close knit together. They like similar things. He calls to similar ideas. They're not going to judge too much, but they also don't like people who are like not so, about the conversations and shit. You have to want to conversate and not just conversate, have, great conversations towards something that, might become a thing one day. Revolutionary ideas. This is a free lover right here. This person needs to be free to love who they want to love the ideas that they love, and, just be that. They don't mind talking to anyone, but like they they'll talk to anybody, right? But they need that thirst for knowledge. They thirst for knowledge. They thirst for that, and that's exciting to them. Learning new things, meeting new people is a good thing. And the people they know, they always come back to them for a great conversation. And the people they love, like in a relationship, you have to be smart in being able to challenge them mentally. If you can't do that, then you probably ain't gonna be, somebody they love to stick around and spend time with the most. And that's what that person likes. Even if they weren't a smart person to begin with, but they always wanted to be smarter and know more about things, and they do that, and they do become smarter over time and more knowledgeable on things because of the friends and the people that they let into their lives, and they were open enough to do that. There's nothing wrong with being open in that way. Now, last but not least, the one who loves the best out of everyone, right? In the general sense, Venus and Pisces in the first house. People see this person, they're like, damn, how romantic, how very caring, how very compassionate you are towards your lover. And they known to maybe even make people envious of them. And then in the same breath, they could be envious of other people if they haven't found that. But I doubt that that's the case, because guess what? They already have their lover. And what they do with their loved ones, they go above and beyond with the care and the love. They love to hear the, smart shit they have to talk about, the, shit they've done at work and other things. They love to, fuck around with this person, feed into their creative ideas. And they do that not just with their relationship like that, but their family members too. I love my brother who does this and that. His name's this, he does this. I know exactly how many this he has and this he has. They take note of shit like that. But that's what they love their brother and shit. They love their mother and all that other stuff, right? These people also, right, are, like I said, they're compassionate people when they love people. They show their love too. There's no question. They may even get emotional and start crying about people. When people hurt them or they feel that somebody else has been hurt, they'll just break out and cry and be like, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I want to help you out. I can help you out, or I can't help you out, but I hope that you find what you're looking for, or I will help you get out of this situation. How dare they not fucking, he calls to you, and how dare they not fucking, help you out. And that's what they do to their friends and shit, right? Their loved ones, they like to keep them, they talk sweet, they say the right things, they show, wisdom in certain areas and shit. They're kind of hard to decline and shit. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to turn a blind eye to this person. I wouldn't say they're the most mysterious, but they're definitely, a dream. They came out of a dream. They're somebody out of, movie. These people are. They make their loved ones feel that way. Goddamn, it's a miracle to be in this person's presence and shit. He's done this for me. She's done this for me. She came into my life and turned shit the fuck around completely. It was fucking bad, and then it went to great life after that. They might describe the relationship to be like that because they step into people's lives and it just, miracles happen essentially. But only for the people they care for. Because this is also a caring person too. Don't get off, but they still, like I said, I didn't say that they don't know how to, talk and, jabber on and on with, but they have to love you. If they don't love you, they're just gonna make certain statements, let people know, like, hey, I know you're feeling like this, but you gotta do this, and kind of keep it short with them. But like with the people they actually love and care for, and are compassionate for, they actually take action and do things to change their mood in a better way. And then like when these people go, it's like, damn, people kind of feel like they, can't get by anymore. It's like that type of thing. A romantic type of lover, they might buy flowers for, or, go above and beyond for them. Once they've earned it, of course, as love is not a thing that, comes easy, that type of love anyways. And then for their friends, like I said, they care about them. They ask them about like how they're feeling a lot. And they do. They're like, how are you feeling today? Do I need to like buy some food? Do I need to do this for you? And I wish I could buy you some food or something, if they ain't in that mood, because I definitely would, you know. Maybe I still will, that type of thing, because they like to, make sure they do that for the people they care for and love, because this is the exalted lover as well. And they're like known by people like that. They're like very loving people, good people to like go to and turn for help. But that is Venus in the first house. The first house is going to be talked about for the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned. It's going to be a long time, but, we're going to be in the first house for a little bit, in the second house, third house, so stay with me. Be cool, Conquer.